Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat begins this evening at 9:06 p.m. Candle lighting the earliest is 7:39. Online Ruach Kabbalat Shabbat 7 p.m. and tomorrow Shabbat ends at 10:28. So an atheist is hiking in the woods when he stumbles across a huge, hungry, grizzly bear. The bear rears up to full height and gives out a roar and leads towards the man. The atheist screams in terror, "Oh God, help me!" Suddenly everything, the bear, the trees, the birds, everything but the man freezes. The man looks and he sees the clouds are parting and a heavenly voice reaches his ear. "All your life you deny my existence. Now you call my aid as death is upon you? I'm sorry, my son, but it is too late." The atheist thinks quickly, it's life and death. He says, "Well, God, if it's too late for me to become a believer, how about you just convert the bear?" At which point, time begins moving, and immediately the bear stops roaring and respectfully gets on his knees and says, "Oh Lord, bless this meal of which I am about to partake." Now, I tell this anecdote for two reasons. First, because this week we read of another talking animal, not a bear, but the donkey, the one owned by Bilam. But more because in the story of Bilam's talking donkey, we find strange nuances. You see, Bilam's donkey is running as fast as Bilam is chasing it to curse the Jewish people, but there's an angel in the way. Bilam profusely hits the donkey, which miraculously says, "I'm your trusted donkey, why hit me?" And then the angel reveals himself and challenges Bilam for having hit the innocent donkey, to which Bilam says, "Chatati, I sinned, ki lo yadati, I hadn't seen you, I didn't know you were there." But if he didn't know he was there, then he was legitimately didn't know, then he hadn't sinned. Why are you saying I've sinned because I didn't know? Rabbi of Tzanz answers this within a story of a rabbi who was also a disciple of his from a local village that came to visit him. And he said, Rabbi asked him, "How is Mr. So-and-so, your congregant, doing?" And the Rabbi said, "Actually, I didn't know that there was anything wrong with him." He said, "That was what Bilam said. Lo yadati, I didn't know." And the sin sometimes is that we don't know and we don't realize what somebody else is going through. That itself is the problem. Now, in our own lives, we may not realize how someone else is doing. Worse, we may excuse our behavior. We see it all the time with these anti-Semitic retweets, and where they say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't read the entire article," or, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know it caused offense," or, "I'm sorry, I didn't know you were listening." But we all can do better. When somebody comes to us and gives us feedback and criticism for what we've done and we're unaware of and we need to apologize, perhaps we can go a step deeper into our consciousness and we can ask ourselves, how or why was I so insensitive to react or behave in that way? Speaking of feedback and criticism, I'm looking forward to Shul opening because giving sermons in Shul is one challenge, where you get the feedback and the criticism of your jokes and your stories, but when you've got to put it online, then you get congregants and rabbis from other synagogues and around the world giving feedback. So just in case anybody thinks that I'm sounding a little bit too mussar reprimanding in this castigating message of the sermon today, namely telling people how you should behave and how you should be more sensitive, you can spin actually this entire Bilam Chatati lo yadati story on its head. You see, not always is being unaware a bad thing. Sometimes there's a hidden miracle. In fact, exactly as this story demonstrates. It was in the town of Gostinin. Everybody was fast asleep, the doors and the shutters were all closed, and a guest arrived in the town. He had nowhere to go. He was tired, he was weak, he was hungry, and suddenly he sees in afar a shining light in one of the windows. He sighs in relief and he hurries over in the direction and knocks on the door, hoping to be allowed in. Little did he know, in fact he didn't know, that the host was the home of Rabbi VirtShul, mayor, the great righteous tzaddik of Gostinin. The host was so excited, his smile lit up, and he said, "Shalom Aleichem, Rabbi, welcome, come on in." He ushers him inside, everyone's fast asleep. But filled with joy, he serves him a warm tea, brings him some pastry. But the visitor's clearly hungry, and he's finished the drink, and there's barely a crumb left. Rabbi VirtShul goes and looks into the kitchen. He's not used to cooking, and he finds some oats, some fats in a pot, and he puts them together, puts it in the oven, and comes out again so excited, and he feeds his host. He feeds his guest, who still is unaware who the host is. When he's finished, beaming with pleasure, he takes a bed, his very own bed. It was a small house with no extra guest bed, and he warmly wraps him up to go to bed, at which point the holy tzaddik goes back to his Talmudic studies all through the night, even with greater enthusiasm. The following morning, the traveler wakes up, he goes to Shul, and after prayers, he realizes in the conversations with the townspeople that he had actually been staying in the illustrious Rabbi VirtShul mayor's home. He's ashamed. He's distressed. He's utterly disappointed how he could have done that. And he approaches the Rebbe, the holy tzaddik, and he says, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. The tzaddik says, I'm sorry. As much as you're sorry, I refuse to accept any apology from you. The traveler protested. He says, please, I had no idea whose house it was. I didn't realize I was sleeping in your bed. Had I known, I would never have put such a holy man through these troubles. Again, Rabbi Yechiel Meir is unfazed, but the traveler is eager to be forgiven, and he's persistent in his explanations. Finally, Rabbi Yechiel Meir says to him, you know what, I will promise, if you promise to do what I tell you, then I'll accept your apology. So the traveler's hesitant. What's he going to tell him to do? Maybe it's going to be impossible, but he says it's worth it. Rabbi Yechiel Meir would accept his apology, he'll do it. Whatever the tzaddik wants. The tzaddik, Rabbi Yechiel Meir, turns to him and he says, this is my request. Anytime you pass this town, anytime you come, I want you to be my guest in my home. For when do I ever get a chance to fulfill this mitzvah of achnasat orchim, this mitzvah of hospitality? Something I never get to do. My townspeople spoil it for me. You see, the traveler didn't know it was the great Rabbi, but the Rebbe was quite happy that he didn't, and therefore wouldn't accept the apology. Not every time that we're on the receiving end of someone else's mistake is it quite so bad. To the contrary. And sometimes when we thought we did something wrong to somebody else, it might have been the right thing for them at that moment. Of course, let us be more sensitive to others. Of course, less sensitive perhaps for ourselves. But ultimately, we must remember and realize that all that happens is Hashem's making. God bless and Shabbat Shalom.